Hello and welcome to everybody's favorite art podcast. We're back. Okay, I don't know about the favorite part, but we're back anyway. This episode, we have a very esteemed guest. Concept designer Simon Lee has joined us in our virtual studio space. Actually, his place looks most like a studio compared to what you see here. I don't want to talk too much. I'm going to give the mic to Emmanuel right away so he can introduce our guest properly, and then we'll start the interview.
Yeah, hi. This is Simon Lee. I knew of him a couple years ago when my wife said, "Hey, you got to check this guy out. He's doing some really cool stuff." And that's when he got on my radar. And I've been sort of loving, what I've been seeing, all this time. And then last year I had an opportunity to spend some time with him to do some mentorships and, really get to sort of know how he thinks. And I found him to be super interesting person, a lot to say, a lot of it, my kind of talk. So, I really felt it would be very valuable to bring him on and to get some point of views from him and see for everybody to get to know him. I'm sure everybody already knows Simon Lee, also known as Spider Zero. I think, one of the things I found most interesting was sort of how he got started. Which is a very interesting story. And I don't know whether you know one of our most popular episodes. It's about never too late. That's our most popular episode. So with that, could you give us a little, history on like how you got started and that whole story is super interesting.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me in this episode. It's my pleasure to be here. And when it comes to my origin story, okay, I've told my story so many times here in my studio and in my all the workshops I've done around the world. But uh, well, I was born in China, and when I was 10 years old, my family moved to Hong Kong, and I lived there for 10 years. I came to the United States when I was 21 years old. I came here to get my college education. I went to business school. I got my degree in business administration, marketing. After I graduated, I worked in marketing for about 2.5 years. And after that, I got bored with just doing marketing stuff. I decided I was going to somehow learn how to build websites. Back in those days, the internet was just starting, AOL, all that stuff. So I just went ahead and opened up a web design company. Basically taught myself how to do all of that and went on to build websites for the next 10 years. And when I was 38 years old, um, my son was born. And that was, somehow my wake-up moment. Um, you know, th- uh, this is the art department podcast, but everything I've been telling you so far sounded like the contrary, that it doesn't qualify me to be in the art department podcast. But the parallel to my previous, mentioned journey was that I started sculpting when I was 5 years old. But basically, I was completely self-taught. I was just, making stuff on my own, and just, playing with clay and all that stuff. But I was always just a hobbyist because, growing up in a really traditional Asian family, the very idea of becoming an artist was never, you know, part of my thinking. Was never part of my reality. When I thought about artists at the time, starving artist was the term that came to mind. But ever since my childhood, I've always kept up the act of sculpting and just making stuff for myself. But I never received any kind of proper training or official training, just messing with the material myself. But when my son was born, looking at my newborn baby boy at 38 years old, I realized, oh my God, life is precious. look at my little baby boy. He could grow up to be whatever he want to be. And that sort of, jolted me deeply. I was looking back at my own life, say, okay, so what am I doing with my life? I was 38 years old. I was building websites, but it's not something that I love. Wanted to live my life doing something that I loved. So I thought about it long and hard, sort of. And then I had a conversation with my wife. I told her I really want to be an artist. I want to be a full-time artist, but you can just imagine how uh, interesting and difficult that conversation was like. But basically, we came to the agreement that I was going to do art for a year. If that didn't work out, I will go back to building websites. Um, and then, that was the agreement. But in the back of my head, I thought, there's, I'm not going back. This is the one thing that I'm going to do, and failure is not an option because it's not just about, self-indulgence. It's not just about me trying to do something that I loved, but also I had to be, I was a father of newborn baby boy. I had to be responsible for my family. So I decided I was gonna become a professional artist, and I would also want to be, a responsible parent, and a responsible caretaker. But at 38 years old, I realized that, and without any kind of formal education or any kind of portfolio of any kind, um, and zero industry connection, and had to make it work with those kind of setup, it was extremely difficult to say the least. But in the back of my head, I just decided I was going to use everything that I knew as an adult and to make that thing work. And the plan that I came up with was I was going to build up my portfolio right in front of people. Okay, and what I mean by that was I decided I was going to make one sculpture a day for 5 days a week and to do it for an entire month. So, 20 days total. And I basically just went online and started spreading words and telling people that, hey, I'm going to do this thing. It's called the 20 Days of Monsters. Okay. The reason why I wanted to do it is because number one, I felt like I needed a portfolio. And number two, I was running out of time. Number three, nobody knew who I was, And even if I sucked, it's okay because nobody, I figured no one was watching, no one was paying attention anyways. But I had to get the ball rolling, So that was my game plan. That was my thinking. So I went to all of the at those in those days, all of the sculpting forums, and conceptart.org, those kind of places, and on my website, just telling people that I'm gonna be doing this thing. And so every day I would just go into, my studio, and I start at 10 a.m., start sculpting and finish at 5, take all the pictures, go home, process them, upload to my website, publish online. So I did that, 5 days a week for the next 4 weeks. And at the end of that, I remember on a Sunday, very vividly on a Sunday, I went out to lunch with my wife and my baby boy, and I got a phone call, and it was from a blocked number. I figured it's probably a sales call. I didn't pick up. Afterwards, a voicemail came on. When I checked it, it was Guillermo del Toro
What?
leaving a voicemail on my leaving a voicemail on my phone saying, "Hey Simon, I'm a big fan of yours. Would you be interested in joining my concept design team for the next project?" You know, I figured probably someone was pranking me, right? I mean, how could it be? But long story short, a few weeks later, uh, you know, when my car was parked outside of his house, when I started working, on the project, it dawned on me that my life has changed, you know, because honestly, at the time, I didn't even know what a concept design, or what a concept designer do. I mean, what a concept designer was. let alone feeling that somehow that I was qualified. I figure, why would this person hire me as the world-class director? It's got to be either he's made a mistake or I was extremely cheap. But I did not care. I just started working. But it's only after I started working I realized all those years before, I've been working very differently than most other sculptors. Because, the way I work is that I would just start picking up some clay. I'll just start making the whatever ideas coming to my mind, whatever I felt was adequate. So I was working very much like an illustrator and not the typical sculptor of, here's a design, let's hire someone to make it. So I was designing these things for three-dimensionally. And because I was working really fast as well, so it was proven to have a lot of value to the concept design pre-production process. So basically, that was how I got into the industry and how I started in this field as a professional uh, um, concept designer. And ever since then, I actually, concurrently as I was doing concept design, I had people started to reach out to me, ask me if I wanted to teach. So I actually started teaching in my spare time as well. And because I was completely self-taught, I was just basically just sharing with people my observation, my experience, and all of the knowledge that I've collected along my own journey. So that was my origin story.
Yeah, that's one hell of an origin story. I'll tell you. When you start doing it at 38, it's not easy. And I wonder, did you ever have a chance to, when you started working with Guillermo, like to ask him, like, why did he call you? Like, what was it about your stuff that he really, vibed?
I never asked him that while I was working on that particular project. The reason was I didn't want to, sort of like, I didn't want to poke the hornet's nest kind of thing. You know, I didn't want to wake him up, so all of a sudden say, wait a minute, why did I hire you again? I never asked him, but because I was, building websites before, I was doing a lot of, I was doing programming work as well. So I was always been very analytical. So while I was working, I was almost like I was self-diagnosing myself. What am I contributing here? And I'm looking around, the concept design team. Most people were illustrators, world-class artists, and the way they work, I would just observe how they're approaching the design task. Half a
Okay.
sculpture pretty much worked out. So with a three-dimensional concept, not only do you get the physicality side of the design, but because I was making traditional clay sculpture, so there's gravity, there's weight, meaning the questions about whether this thing can function in the real world has already been answered. Even later on, when they have to build the digital model, there's already a markup. And, because you can move light around that thing. So, in a way, there's kind of previous value that you can pull from what I was contributing as well. So, from that part project on, each new project I was working on, each new class of students that I was teaching, I was just constantly uh, try to communicate my process, but at the same time, um, analyze what I was doing and try to, refine my process and to get better as an artist and to understand, my client's perspective more. So, so in that regard, I was always thinking about what my clients were thinking about. Yeah, as a film director, you know, yeah, how would they look at a concept design project? So that was actually, um, in a way, so when I started working in films, that was the starting point of my journey, um, of my evolution, into this different person and a different artist. So, yeah, so that it has been a hell of a journey, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's super interesting, and the way you're analytical about not only what you do but also what your clients want. Um, when I look at your stuff, there's so much personal voice in there. I can't even tell which is personal stuff and which is professional stuff. I mean, obviously, some of the more obvious things you can tell because it just seems like um, you almost do. There's no distinction, but I guess that would be my question: is there a distinction between personal art and something you do commercially, or is it just it's just art?
Um, and that's a great question. I mean, I look at everything as just art, but when it comes to my personal art, they're really personal. Meaning, when I do my art, I don't do any kind of drawings. I don't do any kind of preparation. I don't look at references. It's just me. I would just go in and um, communicate whatever I was feeling, allow that to come out. So when people ask me what's my inspiration, um, the things that inspire me are actually just my daily encounters. I could be having a conversation with someone. I could be listening to a particular piece of music. Um, Whatever emotion that arouses in me, that will be, my fuel, uh, of me going into my creative process, because I had no idea what I was going to create. Every day when I'm, sitting in front of my sculpting desk and I try to create, I have no idea what I'm about to make. I'm just as eager to find out what will emerge at the end, just like my students, because I try to make that as a dynamic and organic, and a spontaneous process as much as possible, because I find that to be extremely challenging and extremely rewarding as well. So with my personal work, it's always like that. Everything is very, very, spontaneous and on the spot. And when I do my client work, I will put that type of energy into the process as well. But the only difference is I would try to understand my client's perspective. I would try to understand what kind of world that they're trying to create. Because working as a concept designer, you know, I like to think that we're explorers. We're not visitors. We're going someplace that we're actually taking the team along, going somewhere that no one has ever been before, right? So, but in that regard, I want to understand what kind of world that they're trying to create, at least in terms of text. When I get a script or even a partial description, I want to imagine that world, and I want to uh, put myself as the explorer, and to almost like a pull aside this curtain, you know, and and poke my head in and see what this world is like. And so that's how I, look at my professional work. It's never about just making something cool or making something scary. In a way, that's almost, because I work a lot of times as a creature designer. Um, but in a way, I feel like that is almost a given, considering how much experience I've had. Um, but the more interesting part is what I can bring to the table is me. It's not I'm being influenced by, 20 other images or someone else's recommendation. Um, I would try to put myself into the situation and deliver the recommendation that way, because that's why they're hiring me, that they hire me in the first place, right? And based on their feedback, I will make adjustments, so on and so forth. But that's how I always approach all of my projects, by putting myself in the center and staying, true to myself. But at the same time, when I'm working with clients, taking into consideration their perspective, because I know that I'm just there to help them solve a problem.
Yeah, wow, interesting. I mean, definitely there's a distinction then between the two, but I think, from what I'm hearing, you just kind of um, putting still yourself into it, but solving the client's problem, as the most important thing at that moment, instead of sort of solving your own need for making art, I guess, right?
Yeah. And I think the most rewarding part is when I'm working this way, it every single project, every single piece that I'm making, that I'm designing is helping me, discover another part of myself in a way, because I'm making this such a personal journey in a way, you know.
I actually had a question, and it kind of brings me a bit back to, I guess, before you got hired by Guillermo. Although I have a lot of questions about that moment as well. But I mean, so I think for me and for the audience, not to get the wrong idea that basically like you set yourself the challenge, 20 sculpts in 20 days, and then that's what got you hired by Guillermo del Toro, right? It was not like that. It was more like, if I understand it correctly, like an overnight success, like 35 years in the making, right? Um, More or less. So you mentioned that you kind of started playing with sculpting and clay from like a very early age on. But
Mhm.
so you did that. You continued to sculpt in your own time while you were studying, while you were working in different jobs. All the time you were just kind of like sculpting, or were there like periods of time where you kind of stopped and then you picked it up again? I feel like it's very difficult for anybody to kind of sustain a hobby over like multiple decades. Maybe you can share a little bit of like that what kept you going.
Well, I think actually, a lot of the discovery I made after I became a professional artist was that I was thinking back. I was pondering myself all the questions that you just brought up.
Hmm.
Why did I start sculpting in the first place? I figure, what I realized was when I was little, my family was extremely poor. So basically, I did not have any toys, and the kind of I guess the back in those days, the Chinese version of the Play-Doh was probably the cheapest thing that my parents
Hmm.
could get me. And because I didn't have any toys, so I was just always just making my own play things with, little blocks of clay. And because of that, because I started at such a young age, so all of the training that I had was basically I was becoming uh, I was getting better and better in terms of the dexterity in my fingers, so the ability to create shapes. I developed that at a very, very young age. Um, because for an illustrator, in order for this person to be able to draw well, the person will have to do a lot of drawings. In order for a sculptor to be able to design well, this person will have to handle material uh, so often that this person will be able to develop the ability to control pressure just to the right amount. So that was the kind of benefit that I was able to extract from my process of making things at such a young age. So, but going back to your question, I wasn't always just making things nonstop. It was just a hobby. Hobbies are meant to be a pastime. Hobbies are meant to be not stressful. It was supposed to make me comfortable. So I was only doing that from time to time. But so it was not, like a thing that I was forcing myself to keep up. I just had the natural inclination of always making things with my hands. I was always finding myself going back to it. Sometimes I would probably make a thing for a few weeks, and then I will stop for a few months, and then I will come back to it. I will always go back to it. Um, so that was the conclusion that I made at the end. So I feel like, at 30 something years, I was still making stuff with my hands. And even as a teacher, because when I teach, I only teach, professional artists, and people coming to me from you know, different places in life and different areas in the industry. But one thing I've noticed is that there's a a certain percent of the population, we have the tendency of making things with our hands. Okay, we actually enjoyed um, that sense of touch because when you're touching the material, it triggers a different neural pathway in your brain. And some people are just more inclined to doing that just because the difference of in our brain, the way that we are built. So I guess I'm probably one of those people. And so it wasn't something that I had to force myself. It was really, a hobby that I truly, truly love. And when you love something, there's no pressure. You're fully enjoying the thing. You're actually able to extract so much more from it.
Interesting, interesting. I mean, um, another question I would have is like, okay, so at that point when you said like the birth of your son was kind of like a trigger, right? Um,
Mhm.
um, and then when you embarked on that new journey with that deadline of like given by your wife, right, the 1 year, um, kind of, and on top of that, you said like even though when you got the job in the art department of Guillermo's movie, you didn't really kind of know what a concept designer was. So when you set out on that 1 year journey, kind of like what did you have in mind, if anything? Like what was the goal for you? Like was it very
Oh,
like was that very like what do you call it, like very economical in terms of like, yeah, I want to make a certain amount of money just by doing art, or like kind of understanding your thought process at that point?
great, great question. It's a collective of everything you just
Mm,
mentioned because when I made the switch, it wasn't because of
mm,
money. It was because I realized what was more important in life. I think at 38 years old, pushing
mm,
40, that was also a big factor. It felt like time was running out, you know, um, and looking at my son and then looking at myself, basically it was me looking at life in general. What was the reason for me being here? I wanted it to be I'm I'm here to be an artist. I'm here to serve a purpose of something that I love. And it's not just about self-indulgence. It wasn't about just money. It was about money and love for my own life, for my family's lives, for everything. So it sounded almost philosophical in a way, but it was actually more of that. It was more of a almost like a spiritual
oh
awakening.
my god, okay.
It just sort of
Mm,
connected by
mm,
making a thing, and somehow it got, attached to filmmaking. Um, and and to be honest, looking back into those 20 days, I learned so much. I was able to unleash so much within that 1 month than the previous, I don't know how many years combined. All those years before, I was prepping, I was calculating, I
mm-hmm,
was measuring myself, thinking that I wasn't good enough, this or that, just like any other hobbyist would. I would look at the things like, how do I make this better? But because of the shift in perspective, I stopped judging myself.
mm-hmm,
I just did it. But that was the difference between, second guessing or, I guess the perfection paralysis, all that stuff, versus just unleashing everything that I was capable of. And because all the years before, I didn't know what I was capable of. But because I felt like time was running
mm,
out, I was able to unleash so much more because of it. And once I had that first taste, whatever you want to call that, success or a discovery, I didn't want to stop. I was hooked, because I was just working as a freelancer. I mean, Guillermo del Toro wasn't going to support me for my entire career. It was just a few short weeks. So after that, I had to look for the next one. So again, I was using everything that all the knowledge that I've acquired before, not just as an artist, but also as a marketing person, as a internet
mm,
web builder,
right.
and also as a father, as a person trying to be responsible for my own life, and as a person who was extremely, extremely hungry, to experience more and to experience growth. So I think all of that added together just really, really pushed me forward. And yeah, it's to be honest, that was the best the best turning point
Mhm.
I've ever experienced.
Wow.
I mean, I have a question. I don't know, Jan, if you've got more, but I definitely have
I
some
have
too.
some more, but you can go ahead.
I mean, I guess, since we were kind of on this, is like, do you find, because I think what you do is so different than what most, I mean, I wouldn't even call you you know, just a sculptor, right? A lot of people call themselves, oh, I'm a sculptor, I'm a digital sculptor, or I'm an analog sculptor, and they are, but like you said, you're much more like a concept designer, except you don't do it, on paper, and I find it is a very unique position to be in, and I wonder, you know, have you, first of all, like being self-taught, I wonder if that uh, brought a whole, different perspective, because most people who are, taught a certain way, oh, sculptor, now you're a sculptor. But for you, it's just like, well, I make my own rules, really. I wonder how big of a part, self-taught has, and what you feel about like actual formal education. How do you feel about that?
Hmm. Um, I think the self-taught part was one of the biggest factors of the lack of fear when I first started. Okay, because had I gone to an actual art school, I would probably be very much intimidated by the very prospect of chasing after this thing, or whatever it was. I didn't even know what I was chasing after. It was just forward, uh, you know. Um, and so when I tried to make the switch, I had no quote unquote proper frame of reference of how good I was, or whether or not I was ready to become a full-time artist. It was just I wanted to do this thing, for a living. And so without the fear, I was able to, like I said earlier, I was able to unleash everything that I've acquired up to that point. And because I was just, uh, singularly focused on making this thing work, not just in terms of money. It was not a clear, uh, logical mindset of thinking, okay, I need to make this much money, I need to do this much work. This is the plan I have to execute, and it will happen. It was just like almost like an irrational uh, um, uh, state of mind that I was in. I just forward, but I was guided by everything that I've acquired over the years. Um, uh, all the other skills are also critical, not just in terms of art. Because I was working for a long time as an entrepreneur, so I was always used to the uncertainty of the business world. As a freelance artist, that's another skill that we all need to have. You know, um, so I had that too. And in terms of marketing, in terms of branding, I had that training as well. So I was able to create some, a certain level of leverage of how to utilize, I guess, the limited amount of resources that I have, and try to generate a bigger impact. But that was the starting point. The lack of education is not something that I'm proud of, um, but lack of the proper institutional training, or the teaching, not having access to that environment, also gave me a, I guess, a unique opportunity to figure something out that was very practical. Because like I said, when I'm sculpting, I'm not using any references. I'm not doing any kind of preparation, not because I have a photographic memory, but just I've always worked like this. But in order for me to be able to work like this, I have to be able to acquire what I call a certain amount of structural, uh, visual vocabulary, if you will. So when I'm making sculptural decisions, I'm actually making a statement. I'm speaking a sentence that it will make sense to the client. And the sentence is coming from me. It's not from, oh, here, 20 references. There are all these concept art that looks great. Let me try to mix it up and give you something different. Um, my way of doing it is I'm just going to make this statement. I'm going to communicate this thought is coming um, from my heart through my hands to your eyes, kind of thing. So I was always uh, going going about this process this way, um, and um, so that's why over the years I've never really positioned myself as a sculptor or as a concept artist. When people come to me, they're looking for me, and all of the projects that I was able to land was always one way or another. They track me down. My clients track me down because I've always focused on how do I present myself, as honestly as I can as me. So when people are coming to me, they're looking for a Simon Lee. They're not looking for a sculptor because if they're just looking for a sculptor, there's tens of thousands, if not millions, of great sculptors out there. But if they're looking for a Simon Lee, here I am. There's only one me. I'm not saying I'm good or bad or whatever, but I am saying this is me. So all the work that I create, I want to approach it accordingly. A lot of the stuff that I've created, they're not detailed, they're not finished, but I can always say that 100% that they're always honest. Um, they're full of uh, they're 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 full of everything that I was feeling at the moment. They're also full of flaws, but that's okay because I'm present, and oftentimes, um, when I approach my clients, they can sense it too. So as a self-taught person, that is very, um, a very unique thing that I've noticed in my work and from all of the other professional artists I've taught and people that have gone through the traditional, institutional training process.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that, and because I've been through a formal training, and I definitely feel like there are limits put on you when because you're put into a category. But when I look at your stuff, I mean, um, it's just really unique, and I love what you said about the there's only one you kind of thing, because it's kind of how I like to live, and I think a lot of people that I've spoken to, um, they're especially in now the AI times, they're trying to they get worried and scared, and I think it's a really good time to realize that there's a lot you could say, and you're like a really good example of somebody that's just being yourself. But when people come to you, they come to you for you, and that's really powerful. I mean, I think, Jan.
No, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just,
Yeah, I mean,
you looked like you had a question.
No, I can wait. I can wait until you're done. I have plenty of questions.
No, but I mean, I find that very, and that's one of the reasons why I think I vibe with Simon so much, because I feel what he says, and I try to live that way as well, and I'm going through my own transition, in this sense. I also wonder, are there ever times when clients hire you and, because I have a lot of clients that hire me, and, oh, let's see, 20 versions, and let's just, kind of, go crazy doing that kind of stuff. And, I find that, oh my God, I'm not really vibing with the client that way. I mean, does that ever happen to you, and how do you handle things like that?
um, that is actually rare. I think one of the reasons, again, is because when they approach me, they already know what they're looking for. They're looking for me. So in a way, they're looking for my contribution, not just another professional, trying to give them 20, 30 options so they can they can try to use that and mimic something else. And also the other thing, I guess, when I approach this type of projects, I always put myself in their shoes, try to uh, think about the project from their eyes, because we're not just making something cool. We're making movies, we're making games that caters to an audience. So I try to look at the whole thing from that angle, because I ran a business before. I managed a marketing department before, so I had all of that training of adopting someone else's perspective and try to solve the problem. So in my spare time, I was making things for myself, making art for myself. But in my professional work, before I became an artist, I was always, I always had the experience and the exposure of looking at a situation from someone else's lens. Okay, so so when I approach a movie project or a game project uh, these days, I always, adopt those type of mindset. I realize that I am just being, you know, um, brought in to solve someone else's problem as a professional. I will give them my recommendations and suggestions. But if they don't accept that, that is their prerogative. They get to choose. But I don't let that, bother me or affect me, because my identity as an artist does not hinge on, their opinion or their feedback or their choices, outside of work. I'm still going on this journey, because I'm on this journey to become, again, I don't want to be too philosophical, but I'm really on this journey to try to become a better person through the act of being an artist. In a way, um, I feel like, my clients, they're just tagging along to my journey, because I'm going on my journey no matter what. Um, if it's not this client, it will be someone else. You know, I'm still going to go forward. But what I've noticed is, if I stay true to this principle, it is actually um, people can feel the difference, when they talk to you. They feel that you're coming into this very differently. You're not in this just to make something cool. You're not in this just to try to make some money, you know, and they're actually more open to my suggestions. But obviously, when they do not accept my recommendations, that's perfectly fine as well. Because they're not slowing me down. I'm still moving forward.
Interesting.
Great. Yeah. No. Yeah. Jan.
Yeah. So I was
I
wondering.
I can keep going here.
No, no, you can. I also can keep going. I mean, I think two questions I have. One is kind of connected. The other one maybe different. But so I was wondering if so you're on this journey, and then I was wondering, after you kind of really got a foothold in this industry, like how do you think this has influenced this journey you're on? Like, was it just like one hit after the other, and it's just like it got better and better over time? Like each job was like more of like fulfilling all these like wishes you had and these dreams, or were there times where like you really questioned what you were doing? I don't know, there were terrible jobs that you had, or like big obstacles that you had to overcome, kind of thing. Like that would be interesting.
Mm, no, I never really allowed any of the jobs to define me in a
Mm.
way. I wasn't, uh, because no one is teaching me anything. No one is, when I'm on a job, there's no, uh, I'm working directly with the directors. So I'm listening to their thought process, to their way of thinking. Then I'll try to, tweak my approach to deliver the visuals that can that they can find useful. So when that is the case, um, I don't need to get the satisfaction from, oh, I worked on this high profile project. A lot of times the projects that I worked on, I don't even watch the movies
Mm.
afterwards. It's not because it's not because, I've I look at myself in a certain way, not because of that, but because I felt like I've done that before. I've done that already. I'm just gonna um I'm just gonna move forward because honestly, one of the reasons why I teach, besides doing film work, is I want to expand, my horizon. I want to expand my knowledge through teaching, not because, teaching is not a way just for me to make money, is, like when I'm working with someone like, Emmanuel, with your background, your caliber, your experience, the discussion, the interaction is showing me a whole different perspective on art and on things because we're different individuals. But if I really care about art, um, I will look at your perspective and I will share with you my perspective, and I will, uh, use all my analytical skills to try to uncover more. Okay, I feel this process is way beyond the things that an art school can offer me, because I'm actually using art to, um, gain a better understanding of life. So you know uh, look at all this from what I just described, then the clients, they're just a piece of this puzzle, at a one piece of this puzzle. But this puzzle piece that I'm looking at is much bigger, as much bigger than just working on some high profile movie project or whatnot. No, I'm trying to understand this other thing more. And the stuff that I do in Hollywood is just it's just a small piece of this big equation.
Interesting, interesting. I mean, kind of going a bit more on on like your personal life kind of direction. So, I mean, you grew up. You said like art was not like a viable option for you to pursue growing up, right? And then that watershed moment of your son's birth. Like, is there anything you do particularly that you like look out for in raising your kid or kids? I don't know if you have multiple. Um, that would allow them to be more free in what they want to become, or like do you want them to become artists, or maybe you don't want them to become artists? I don't know. Like do you do anything in regards to that?
Well, I only have one
Mm.
son, so I think he's really creative, and I want him to be an art. I wanted him to be an artist, but I never uh, forced him to be an artist. But he's not an artist. He loves
Mm.
biology. He loves astronomy and all that stuff, which is that's because that's his path, that's his journey. So when I think looking back, when I decided to switch career to become an artist, is really the beginning of a different part of my journey as a human being. And it wasn't just about, okay, I'm changing jobs. I'm going to do this thing to make money instead of that. It was actually um it was actually a moment that showed me what's possible. Like what else is possible in this life? What else um could I be searching for? So then everything start to open up in a way. Uh, I had to figure out how to become a better artist. I wanted to understand what's the purpose of art, and from that it became what's the meaning of life, and what is my position in all this. And being a parent was part of that as well, because I've never been a parent before. It was every year is a new experience. When my son was 1 year old, I was learning to be a parent to a child that's 1 year old. When my son is 16, I'm learning how to be the father of a 16-year-old, which means this journey is never ending for me as well. So every day I'm learning something new. Every day I'm discovering something, um, um, not just about uh, art, but also about life. So in a way, my art was very much closely intertwined with life. I don't look at it as a way to make money. I don't look at it as a way to define me. It's just part of me. Um, then I'm actually learning art in all places. I'm experiencing art in all areas. Um, um, because at the end of the day, earlier we briefly touched on the topic of AI and the impact that it is having on people. Well, you know, um, in a way, I look at art. Art has always been a reaction to culture. Art is not its own thing. Art has always been part of culture, and when human culture is changing, the art the very definition of art itself and the definition of the artist is also changing. That has always been the case. So, when I look at all these different pieces, look at all this situation, I'm actually more hopeful about finding more uh, because this has always been my principle of you know marching forward or carrying on with this journey. So yeah, so I don't try to force my kid to do anything. He gets to choose his own thing. I'll try to be as uh, be a guide, a guide as much as I can to the best of my ability. But I know that there's so much for me to learn as well. But um, so I use that type of mindset, that type of philosophy across all areas of my life.
Great, thank you. Emmanuel, you have something?
Well, yeah. I mean, on that topic, I've heard, some of our listeners, and just seeing some of those people post. Some of them are, because of AI, have been sort of saying, "Well, I give up. I'm quitting art. I can't deal with it. Whether they can't find a job, or whether they just sick and tired of the industry and the difficulty of finding a sustainable living. I assume that they've decided to quit, and we have our views. But I wonder, how do you, since you are a teacher and a mentor, how do you feel about people when they say that, or how would you advise them?
Um, well, I mean that's a great question, because it is a very um, uh, um, I guess it is a very interesting and turbulent time in a way, for not just artists, but for humanity in general. So in many ways, I'm trying to navigate this period of uncertainty myself as well. But when I hear um, people that feel discouraged by the technological advancement and all that stuff, and the state of the industry that we're in is I it's normal to feel anxious and feel frustrated and sometimes defeated by all this stuff. Um, but I can only share with them my own personal philosophies. I cannot, tell them how to live their lives, um, because the way I look at the situation is that I chose this path because I wanted to live my life this way, and no amount of technological change is going to deter me from that. Meaning, no one is gonna um, uh, tell me or affect me enough that I would choose to stop living my life as an artist. Um, One of the things that I've always tried to encourage my students to do, even before this whole AI thing, was that we really need to uh, train ourselves not just to become a better artist, but we need to train ourselves to be a better human being. And part of that encompass the ability to handle adversity, to deal with challenges. Um, just like, with any other art form, look at athletes. It's not just about how strong a person's you know body is, how strong their muscles are, is also about how strong this person's heart uh, is built. How does this person operate under stress and challenges? Um, because without the heart of a fighter, you know, a lot of things, in our surroundings, in our societies, will will have that type of debilitating impact on people. So that situation is true with or without AI. You know, you look at if you look at the art world. I've never attended any art school, so I don't know what kind of training that they have on human psychology. For me, myself, I put a lot of emphasis on that. I know how important it is, to forge the heart of a champion. Champions are not just built in gyms. You know, that's part of the process. A lot of it has to do with the way that the way we think, the way we cope with stress and challenges, and that is beyond art. A lot of times I hear people asking me, "So who are some of your inspirations? Who's the sculptors that you
Didn't
admire?"
I just
You
ask
know,
you that last week?
Yeah, I mean, it's natural, it's normal. When we're talking about artists, people would naturally expect that your heroes will be other artists. Um, but when I think back, when I hear questions like that, when I think back on my own, um, I guess process or my own environment, my inspiration and my influence are oftentimes outside of art, is in in any or in all areas of life, because there are people who are able to overcome, seemingly, you know, uh, uh, unbelievably hard situations, that they're able to overcome that and still thrive. I want to learn from those experiences. I want to absorb those kind of energy, because that is the kind of thing that can help me through uh, uh, you know uh, difficult situations or difficult challenges, rejections from people, criticisms from random strangers, or the societal environment that could affect, I guess, my livelihood, and the livelihood of other artists. But those kind of readiness, those kind of training, we should, uh, we need to open ourselves up and gain from elsewhere. You know, if someone's been living their entire life as an artist, and AI, you know, uh, came along, somehow you decide you're going to stop living your life as an artist, obviously that's your choice. But I think that's not necessary. You know, this could be a moment where you need to reassess. Are you going to give up? This privilege that you have, this voice that you have uh, in this world and for your existence? Are you really just going to let someone else to shut you off and cut you off and shut you down? You know, personally, no. It's a resounding no. You know, if you look around my studio, I'm a clay sculptor in 2024. I sculpt digitally as well, mostly. I'm not ashamed of my traditional roots. Um, and I feel that um, we can adapt, we can uh, adjust. It doesn't mean that we're gonna roll over and just give up. It only means we have more growth to do. That's how I look at it, because I don't know how things will, what things are, is going to be like a year from now. But um, I'm personally, I try to hold on to this type of mindset, and I try to share that with all of my students as well.
I love that.
It was really great. Yeah,
What
thank you.
else? Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of done with the questions. I don't know if you have anything that you would like to uh, um, ask, kind of like, I think, to kind of close things off, or maybe Simon has something he wants to share with the audience as well. Feel free to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just, obviously I want to thank you guys for having me here, and, inviting me onto your podcast. And I think this is a great program, just looking at some of the interviews that you have done in the past. I think this is a great um, um, uh, venue to just communicate some of these ideas, some of these thoughts. There are a lot of um, young artists out there, like you guys mentioned earlier, struggling, in this really turbulent times. And yeah, I think, personally, uh, I would, I would, I would say that, I would always encourage people, uh, try to expand your, your thinking, try to expand your circle. If you're going through some challenging times, as an artist, because, you know, uh, one of the things that I've learned, in the business world is that we're the average of basically the top 5 people that we spend the most time with. So when it comes to, the area of dealing with a challenge, okay, if the 5 sources of influence that you have, they're all telling you that how hard it is, then you're most likely going to give up. But if all those 5 people, or even if they're just only one of those people, is is just cheering you on, is just chanting, never give up, you know, no one can cut you off, no one can shut you up, then you have the courage, you will have this glimmer of hope to try to hold on a little bit longer. And sometimes that's all it takes, right? I know that um, it's comforting to have similar ideas when we're surrounded by people with similar ways of thinking. It's comforting, it's a comfortable place to be, but change is always uncomfortable. You know, change always comes through overcoming adversity. That is when you need to get stronger. That's when you need to grow bigger and taller. At least you have to try, because at the end of the day, um, I've decided I'm going to live my life as an artist. Um, um, I will try to get my art to inform me as much as I can what it means to be, not just to be an artist, but also to be a human being. So if that is the case, in the face of I think that type of thinking is even more important. It's not just about your identity, your position as an artist, but also what is your position and your um, purpose as a human being, in the face of uh, machines and technology and all that stuff. Is there something else? Is there uh, some other resources that you haven't tapped into before? For example, earlier I mentioned that when I design, when I create, I start a process by, you know, uh, the way I'm feeling. Machines, they don't feel. Machines, they have no emotions, but as human beings, we do. But if your process has always been, let me find 20, 30 visual references so I can think of a cooler and different ideas, then maybe you have overlooked this other part of you, this much, much more powerful and meaningful part of you. And that's the way that you're feeling. That's your emotional source. You know, that is actually the fountain of your core creativity. So, to a lot of the younger artists out there, if if you're feeling challenged, if you're feeling defeated, you know, um, just try to hold on a little bit longer, expand your circles, okay, and expose yourself to bigger beliefs, to higher thinking. I think that is the thing that you're looking for. That is the hope that you're reaching for. And when you're able to grab onto that, things will start to change, because when you start to think differently, you will start to live differently. And that is where the true discovery is waiting to be made. Yeah.
No, those are
Yeah, I love that.
really great. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
you go ahead. Go ahead.
No, yeah, no, I love that. I have something I want to wrap with,
Sure.
but yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't have anything. I just wanted to say, like, I think this is not
Yeah.
only words for young artists to live by. I think that's words for everybody to live by, no matter the age, no matter the profession, I think.
Yeah, I think this episode is, sort of talking to a lot of different people, and I think it's really needed at this time, and I think there's a really unique way of looking at things. I just wanted to say that Simon has a YouTube channel. I know you haven't done it in a while, but the reason I bring that up, besides just saying, hey, you have a channel, is I listen to, I've listened to every video you have on there, from the old ones up to the recent ones, and I'm always surprised because there's a lot of really, really good information there. I find it very inspiring, and I listen to it very often, which may surprise you. I mean, I listen to it because I feel like there's always something in there to remind you at whatever stage you're at. So I would just say to the listeners, go have a listen, because there's a lot of gold up there that people don't even realize. And I just wanted to say that because I think it's really, really a useful resource. And we'll include the link to his YouTube channel and all your socials in our description. So I just wanted to say that because it's great, man. I'm just bummed you're not doing it. But there's a lot of really good stuff on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the YouTube stuff, I've definitely, just like what you guys are doing, I think it's a great service to the art community, just to have different voices out there. And for my YouTube channel, I wanted to do the same thing. I want to share more of the way I think. I think a lot of times the thinking part is so critical. In addition to the technical stuff, that there's so much technical information out there already. I wanted to share more of the philosophical side of the way I look at the subject of what it means to be an artist. And really we're not just artists of visual creations. We are artists of life. So if that is the case, then maybe this thing of being an artist is worth fighting for us, for people like us, because we get to live this life as artists. But actually, in moments like this, in challenging times like this, we also need to ask ourselves, what kind of artists are we going to be, or do we choose to be? Because we do have choices, and we do have the ability to adapt, to overcome. So once again, even if it's just like a tiny little glimmer of hope, that's all we need to get a sense of direction, especially in this day and age. So again, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for doing this program.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to us and to our audience, of course, as well. I'm sure that you are actually the glimmer of hope that I think a lot of people are looking for. And like you might be for a lot of people that 1 out of 5 that they need to like just hold out a little bit longer. So yeah, like Emmanuel said, we're gonna put we're gonna put all the links, all the socials where you can find and reach out to Simon, where you can take his courses and watch his videos. We're gonna all put that in the description below. We want to thank Simon again for coming on the show, and for our audience, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get alerted when we upload a new video. And thank you so much for tuning in again. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.